We've all heard of the legendary monsters in the world. Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Yeti, the Chupacabra, amongst so many others. But do you ever stop to think about the monsters we don't know about yet? Well, I'm here to tell you about one such monster. One that I know for a fact exists, but no one believes me about. I call it the Denver Demon. This monster's kind of like those werewolves you hear about from old movies, but with a slight difference. During the day, the monster looks just like any other person, but when night falls and the moonlight is shining down, this person begins to undergo a few changes. His teeth grow long and sharp, his nails jagged and pointed, those hazel eyes turning blood red, and the young man's painful screams turning into a combination of a yell and an ungodly roar, and what appears to be steam pouring between his teeth. It runs through the wilderness on all fours, almost a blur but not quite, roaring whenever it stops to look at the moon. While I've yet to see this monster in its normal state, I know I've seen the beast side. Anyway, my story begins like this. My brother Alan and I loved hunting. We'd take our guns out and practice on weekends, sometimes bringing home things we'd accidentally shot. One night, my brother and I were watching a show on TV when a news report came on the screen talking about a semi-crash in the nearby woods. We were curious, of course, and our parents wouldn't be home till next week, so we decided to go out and investigate. Grabbing our guns and ammo, we rushed out of the house without hearing about what had caused the crash. Big mistake on our part. Anyway, we made our way down to the area we heard about and saw the crashed semi-truck. Seemingly out of nowhere, the driver showed up and pointed a 12-gauge shotgun at us.
"Hold it right there! What do you two think you're doing?"
asked the driver, who seemed to be in a panic. Shaking at the fact a gun was in my face, I managed to choke out an explanation. Look, we're just here to see what happened. We didn't mean to cause any trouble, I stuttered, being the coward that I am. The man sighed and lowered his gun before telling us why he was so on edge.
"Sorry about that, boys. Had a nasty fright from some weirdo standing in the road."
Alan and I looked at each other, then back at the driver.
What did the guy look like?
Alan asked.
"Well, all I can remember seeing was the guy's long black hair and glowing red eyes. Next thing I know, it's gone and my truck gets sent flying into the trees on the side of the road."
Alan looked really shocked since he knew every person and animal that lived around here. Meanwhile, I went to check out the truck, and what I saw shocked me. In the side of the truck's trailer was a particularly large dent. Upon closer inspection, I noticed what looked like a fist right in the middle of the dent. Confused, I called over my brother and the driver who had been talking while I checked it out. Alan was more surprised than I was, and the driver was, well, speechless. We knew that no human could have possibly done this sort of thing, but the fist mark confused us. Why would it be there? The driver shook his head and explained that, while he's a big man, and burly at that, there's no way he could have dented his truck like this. Then we heard rustling from inside the trailer. Nodding to each other, we decided to check out the inside. There was a human-like figure digging through the boxes of food. It had black hair and seemed to be, well, rather tall. Possibly about 6 foot. 6 maybe? Pointing his gun at the creature, the driver sternly said,
"All right, whoever you are, drop the food and come out of the truck."
We all heard a growl come from the man, and as soon as it turned to us, we froze. It was looking at us with deep red eyes. For a few seconds, none of us moved, or even breathed, as those red eyes seemed to look right into our souls. Then out of nowhere, the beastly man lunged but ran right past us without us even seeing it. Enraged at the beast for stealing from its truck, the driver told us to stay where we were and ran after it, cursing under his breath as he took off. Hours passed, and it was around midnight. The two of us just sat there, thinking about what we'd just seen. And after hours of silence, Alan spoke.
Maybe we should see if the driver needs help. He's been gone a long time.
I was curious myself, but I wasn't too keen on the idea of chasing a monster. After a bit of coaxing from Alan, I agreed and we grabbed our guns and ran into the woods. After hours of searching, with no trace of even the monster or the driver, we decided it was time to head back. But then something caught my eye. In the dim moonlight, I could just about make out the image of a person. I called my brother over, and we made our way over to where I was looking. What we saw horrified us. There, leaning against the tree, was the driver. His eyes wide in a lifeless stare, his mouth open as if he was screaming, and his throat torn out. It looked like it had been torn out by a bear at first, but then we realised no bear would be able to tear out the entire front of someone's neck so brutally. My eyes were stuck on the dead driver when Alan started poking me and nudging me to look at something else. Finally, I looked up with a sharp, "What?" The image I saw next will always be burned into my mind. The words, "Go away," smeared in blood all over the tree. Terrified, we decided to run home and never come back. When suddenly we heard a growl and we froze. Standing right in front of us was this beast. Alan pulled out his gun and fired, hitting the monster in the right shoulder, but it didn't even so much as flinch. As the beast staggered towards us, he fired again, this time hitting it right in the chest. But to no avail. My brother began to panic and told me to run. Not wanting to be here anyway, I followed him. I followed his instructions, but not before the beast grabbed my arm and snapped it like a toothpick. I screamed in pain on the ground as this monster smiled down at me. It's almost as if it was enjoying my pain. Fear had been replaced with rage in my brother, and he decided to aim right at his head, but before he could let off another shot, the monster dashed right at him, grabbing his neck and thrusting him against the tree. I tried to reach for the gun that my brother had dropped, but the monster saw me and it kicked me hard in the chest. I felt my ribs snap. Then it turned its attention back to my brother, who was still being held by the neck. The monster grinned as I looked on in fear, its razor-sharp teeth shining against the moonlight. I heard my brother's neck break, just like my arm. But the worst was yet to come. The monster got onto all fours and crept towards me until it was looking me right in the eyes. Then, it uttered some words. "Leave me alone." I couldn't believe it. This beast could speak. Afraid for my life, I tried to speak, but no words would come out. The monster growled back at me and turned to my brother, who was now coughing up blood, but somehow still alive. Enraged at Alan still being alive, he hoisted him up by his shirt with ease, thrusted its claw through his chest with a sickening crack from his ribs. In the creature's hand was my brother's still beating heart, and with a gruesome squelch, and no effort, crushed it. I vomited at the sight of this, and tears rolled down my face. I just lost my brother, the one who taught me everything I know about life. As I looked up, I saw his body, cold and lifeless, lying against the tree. I looked around and the beast was gone, leaving so much destruction in its wake. I stood up, in utter agony, grabbed my brother's body with my good arm, threw him over my shoulder, and carried him home, and left him on his bed. I didn't know what else to do. What would anyone do in this situation? A week went past. The house was quiet. I hadn't muttered so much as a gentle cry in a week. Everywhere I looked, there were pictures of me and my brother. Then I heard the front door go. As soon as my parents came home, I told them what had happened. They thought I was telling a sick joke, but as soon as I showed them my arms and ribs, they broke down. The next day, my brother got a proper burial. I got my arm and ribs fixed up, and the news told a story that passed it off as a bear or a cougar attack, and left out the fact that my brother had a clawed hand thrust through his chest. Figures the media would cover up what's really happened. But I know for a fact that this beast is real, and that it's still out there. There are nights where I can hear its terrifying roar, see its eyes glowing in the distance as it runs through the forest. One thing's for sure though, I'm not done with this beast. Not yet.